I'd like to call to order this June 26, 2023 board meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone for attending, and we are going to start with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance from Trustee Matt Hogan.
If we would bow our heads and let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come humbly before you and ask for your protection, guidance, and clarity as we navigate the decisions that impact our children, neighbors, and friends. We ask you this in your name we pray. Amen.
That will bring us to number 8 on our agenda, which is the superintendent's report. So, Dr. Ross.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and our community, thank you for the opportunity to do the superintendent's report. We have 3 items we'd like to bring to you. The first one is our year in review, but it always starts off with 3 critical questions that we ask ourselves each and every day. That's the vision question. Why do we exist? The mission question. How do we accomplish our vision? And then the outcomes that we all love, and that's what have we created? What are those outcomes? Our vision, our why question is driven by that notion that we love and we grow our students. Our mission is that we provide safe, secure, diverse, and equitable learning environments focused on academic, social, and emotional growth and development. What are the outcomes that we seek? We seek those outcomes that every student feels loved in our schools, and that our objective is that every student has demonstrated academic growth in our schools. What does that look like? It's measured in our performance goals and our strategic plan, our school climate, our teacher admin quality, student achievement goals, and our gifted and talented strategies. Our goal this year is to be focused on that growth and development, and I'm excited about the work that our teachers, our students, our support staff, administration, our parents, and our communities have done to stay focused on that growth and development. Some highlights from the past year that I'm excited to tell is that we were able to continue to tell our story. We put in our D5 story, Good News Ambassadors, to continue to tell that story. I'm excited to announce that the National School Public Relations Association awarded our District 2 Golden Achievement Awards for communication and telling the story that we have, as well as our Sunday videos that we do to our parents. And so I'm very appreciative of that, telling that story. And we look forward to next year as we continue volume 2 of telling our story each and every day. I'm excited about the supports that we have for our students. If you remember last year, this time the nation was gripped, and the threats that we received in terms of what was going on in Uvalde and how we could secure our buildings. We were dealing with situations in terms of making sure we had SROs and school safety officers in every school. We opened with the open gates and did the emergency procurement to ensure that we had weapons detection systems in every school. I was very proud to see that Lexington and Richland County and our security team, we all acted as a board, as a community, to come together, and on the first day of school, every school was covered. We haven't had one school with 3 groups of security from Lexington, Richland, and our private security. I'm excited about the work that we've done with Care Solace. This is not about efficiency, but it's about effectiveness. That when you deal with a system where we went from 30 suicide evaluations a month to 36, but we had the people in place for those students, for those families, through our Care Solace supports. Our first jobs initiative, expanding to all of the high schools, Excited that when I thank those members who could attend the board, our signing day, where we had our students, when we dealt with the situation of a work shortage, we looked into our own classrooms and found students who could do state-approved work-based learning experiences right here in School District 5. We're excited about the staff recognitions, not only financial, but the supportive ones, supporting our teachers. This board supported the D5 Stars program, where we had two of our very own state teachers of the year, South Carolina State Teachers of the Year, who are giving back to their colleagues, to their teachers in support roles. And to hear the testimonies of those first-year teachers that had those supports from our two very own State Teachers of the Year is very reassuring. I'm excited about the capital projects, the work to get an amazing design for Irma High School, the groundbreaking at Chapin High School, and our work with contracting with a strategy in place for our 5-year plan. But we do it so that our students are ready for their futures, which are different from our past. And I'm excited that the class of 2023 at this point consists of 1,241 students. But we're excited to say we won't stop there as we look forward to summer graduation, where we continue to add to the class of 2023. So again, we have a lot to celebrate. This is just a very short breakdown of the year. We'll do another one as we start off the year. But I wanted you to see just some of the amazing accomplishments that we've had in School District 5. As always, we have an opportunity to look forward. And what does the future look like? Looks like our strategic plan. We committed to that 5-year plan, and we're going to continue to see those strategies through. So goal 1 is on school climate. We have 6 strategies that our administrators are working on, our teachers and our staff. Goal 2 is about student achievement. We have 6 strategies that our district employees are working on each and every day. Goal 3 is about teacher and admin quality. Those 6 strategies that we're working on to ensure the best teachers and administrative teams. The number 1 impactor to a child's education is the teacher. Number 2 is an effective principal working with that teacher. And then number 4, gifted and talented strategies. How do we stretch our students to get the best? And we expand that notion of gifted to include all talents and gifts. So with that, Madam Chair, that's just a quick highlight of the 2022-2023 school year. And we look forward to the continued excellence of School District 5 for the upcoming year. Before we move on to the monthly financials, are there any questions, staff, any questions on this year?
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
Dr. Ross, on the mental health and particularly the suicides, I read a study recently where some scientists dissected CDC data, and they found that more teenagers commit suicide during weekdays and during the school year than they do on weekends and the summers. And they kind of delved into that and found that 2 of the driving forces were anxiety associated with schoolwork and homework in particular, and also bullying. So I was just curious, do you think that might be the case in our district as well as, nationally? And if so, what kind of things are we considering or doing to try to lessen that anxiety and the bullying?
Thank you. I think the number 1 thing we can do is if you look at our annual report, we talked about our number 1 issue that we think challenges us is mental health issues. And we see those on the notion from anxiety to depression. These are things that are gripping us, substance use disorder. Those are those root causes that we need to address. I am very committed to what's known as SEL, or social emotional learning, and an opportunity to look at how do we address with a common language these issues that the children are dealing with. When a child has the flu, it seems like the whole community comes around that family with remedies and things that could help that child with the flu. When a family is going through suicide ideation, it seems like that family is all alone. When a family is going through acute depression or sustained anxiety, sometimes you feel by yourself. What we're dealing with now in our classrooms, it's not just 2 or 3 students. It seems like the majority of students. And our teachers are not equipped with those tools at mass and at scale to get students in that area where they're prepared to learn. We are doing it very well in pockets, but I want to support every teacher, every school with the correct vocabulary, with the correct science, so that we can identify those things. We have opportunities we're going to be in the next year talking about our grading philosophy. We're engaging the community on what are our beliefs about grades, about schoolwork, how much, the frequency, progression, measuring, all of that is a great opportunity to do this. We're talking about technology and its impacts. And so this is an opportunity this year to really get ahead of it. We're going to bring back to this board our recommendations for discussion with the community. How do we equip our classrooms with those tools so they can address the environment and the mental state of our children? There are those that say that's not our place. We're supposed to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. But if you're not in the learning mind, you can't get to those 3 R's.
Any more questions for Dr. Ross? Mr. Satterfield?
Yeah, I had a question since Ms. Huddle brought that up. I wonder do we ever get any feedback on how many students that we have within our district that are zoned for our schools that are enrolled in Connections Academy and some of the online services? The reason is I ran into a friend of mine who's an administrator with that organization, and because of my age, I'll probably forget exactly what he told me, but I want to say they had like 65,000 students enrolled in that that's children that normally, now I don't mean, across the state, but that's a lot of children. And again, I could be high on that number, but I was just curious if, and I know that I have talked with some parents who have said their children are going to be taking online courses because of anxiety. And one of them specifically said that to me, but I was just curious if we ever got any feedback or any numbers, or do we have any data of how many students that are enrolled in online schools, not coming day to day?
We do, Mr. Satterfield, do keep track of students who are enrolled in online homeschool associations throughout the state, and that's an annual accounting of students in various and sundry programs. Obviously, I don't have numbers for you at this particular moment, but the answer to your question is yes, we do track that information just to have knowledge and awareness of where these students are enrolled.
I would, I think this will give us we brought this up with the Parents Advisory, because they're having some of the same questions about the options. There is a term called FOMO. I don't know if you've heard of that, fear of missing out. I'm talking about the lives of our students. You heard of this term? That if you look at the amount of interruptions we have during the day, you think about a teenager in school or adolescents with the cell phone. I mean, data that shows that you can be, in a week, the average person checks their cell phone 1,500 times, receives 30 emails an hour, the average worker. The amount of interruptions. And so when you have a student in the class for an hour and a half and you're told you can't look at that, we're looking at addictive issues that we need to address and address in the right way. We're seeing data that says teenagers manage 5 screens on the cell phone at the same time. This is the reality and that constant interruption to them in their daily lives is something that they're dealing with that we might not have to deal with. And so when we put them into the current society that we're in and the demands that we have to help our children manage through that. That is somebody calling me, the expectation. We have students who say that when they ignore it and they look at it, it says, I've read your text, and why haven't you responded back? Am I not accepted by this group? So all of this gives us an opportunity as a community to wrap around our children and focus on what best situation we can put them in to learn. We've been excited that with organizations like Care Solace, we can refer these at higher and higher rates for help. But this year, I'm excited that we as a community can look at some root causes under that number one priority on our annual review.
Any other questions? All right, Dr. Ross.
All right, at this time, I'm going to ask our CFO, Ms. Madison Paul, to come forward with our monthly financial update for April.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Ross. Thank you for inviting me here tonight to review the monthly financial report through the month of April 30th, 2023. I'm going to start out with the revenue report. So as always, this is broken up between local, state, and other financing sources. Looking at the total to date through April 30th, 2023, where we have collected approximately $187 million, which is 87.5% of our total budget. By time, we are roughly 83% through the fiscal year, but again, about 87.5% of our revenue collected. On the local side at the top, we are at roughly 97.74%. As y'all know, we do collect most of our local tax revenue prior to February. On the state side, that is more of a monthly sequential number. So we have collected about 81.63% of our total state budget. We have received all of Tier 1, the property tax relief for Act 388. Tier 2 and Tier 3 will wrap up over the next few months. So again, in total, roughly $187 million of our $213 million budget. Turning over to the expenditure report. So for the summary through April 30th, 2023, you'll see that of our $213 million budget, we have spent $160 million of that budget, which is about 75%. This is overall right on track with the prior year expenditures. If y'all recall, we do extend our 180 and 190-day employees' paychecks through August 15th, so they will still receive 3 more paychecks after June 30th. So that number will continue to climb in that first section. We have seen additionally some savings in our contractual services, and this was adjusted in the new budget that y'all approved last meeting. But overall, right on track, $160 million of the $213 million budget. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle.
I have several, and I'll do one at a time in case other people do, but I think I may have asked this before, and this time I'm going to write it down, but supplies and materials in operation of plant is expected to be over budget, I think $1,690,000. I know that's not on this slide, but it was in the packet that we received.
Sorry, can you point me to where
It's
you are?
supplies and materials, and it's under operation and maintenance of plant, which I think is right under facilities.
Is that function 254?
I did not write the number down, I apologize. It's the only line item anywhere in there that's that much over, expected to be that much over budget.
254. 1.6 million. I'll have to take a look at that.
Okay.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
That's fine.
I can
I
take a
have
look.
some more questions, but
Does anyone else have any questions? Ms. Huddle.
okay. I've had a member of the community send to me a organization that we paid for mentoring, and I've sent some emails about that. They've sent me another one, which I haven't sent you guys yet. But the overarching question, both of these were for Dutch Fork High School, and I looked, and I haven't seen any mentors that we paid for any other schools. So my question is, several parts. When do we pay mentors? When do we not? How do we decide how much to pay mentors?
I believe we decide that at the school level. That's not something that comes through my office.
So anybody can put in like an application, or if somebody wants to be a paid mentor, how do they go about doing that?
Based on our procurement, and correct me if I'm wrong, on our procurement policy, there are items where we don't put out to bid, correct?
Yeah, so educational services, student services, if it's less than $25,000, then that does not go through, it doesn't go out to bid.
And school principals do have the authority to look at educational services as per the procurement policy, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so we give those principals that authority to do, they have their budget and they have the procurement policy in which they're to follow.
Yes, sir.
If a member of the community wanted to support students as mentors, whether it's a paid, how would they go about that?
So they would, enter into a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding with either the school or the district. And they would, then if it's at the school level, they would decide on the services that, they would render through that agreement. And then at that point, they would put in a purchase order for that contract amount. And then they would begin, once they provided the service, they would begin invoicing at that point.
All right, so if somebody's interested, they would have to contact the school. Okay. Another question I had is, the same individual sent me where we had paid a church for some, I think it was called, it was under ESSER 2 money was used, and it was called for supplies, miscellaneous purchase services, and summer camp. So my questions on that were, did we make that type of program, and it was like over $15,000, did we make that type of program available to all of the faith-based organizations in our community? And if so, how did we make that program available?
I'll defer to Dr. Harris on that question.
Early in the process of the ESSER funding, we did have a roundtable conversation, in fact, here in this room, with a number of internal and external persons who were represented to talk about how will we address the funding that was made available. And at that particular time, faith-based organizations were a part of that conversation. And if they were interested, they would contact us to inquire and to share what their plans would be. And out of that, or as a result of that, there were churches that shared plans. Some followed through, others did not.
Okay, so they would have had to have been watching our board meeting to know that this was available? There was no other way that we'd let organizations know, is my question.
Right this second, Ms. Hutter, I don't recall, nor do I have available whether there was written correspondence to that effect or not. I don't know that at this second, but I do know that that was a part of the conversations, as well as throughout our various advisories that we have. And I think there are 2 to 14 different advisories that the superintendent leads and that I've been a part of as well. So we spoke to those in all of those, at all of those different times. And I'm certain that it was also a part of conversations and forums such as this as well.
Okay. I've asked these questions and haven't really gotten complete answers yet, so I've written this up and I just asked for, I'm asking to have it put in the minutes. Thank you.
That concludes a financial. At this time, we had some questions about graduation requirements, and so we're going to have our Chief of Academics and our Director of Secondary Education, Chief of Academics, Anna Miller, Director of Secondary Education in School District 5, Nashonda Walters, come forward with our graduation requirements update.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Ross, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come back and give you more information on our graduation requirements, specifically our content recovery and our credit recovery, our seat time recapture and our credit recovery. So our, as Dr. Ross said, our Director of Secondary Education, Ms. DeShonda Walters, will share that with us tonight, and then we'll stand for any questions.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Madam Chair and Board of Trustees, I'd like to briefly provide you with additional insight onto a few of our high school programs that we mentioned during a previous board meeting, credit recovery and credit recapture. Our high school administrators have worked very hard to monitor student progress towards on-time graduation throughout the school year, but of course, as we all know, there may be a few students who may not complete all of the requirements within the time frame given. What happens in our high schools to monitor grad rate is actually a year-round process for all grade levels, which makes their work with credit recovery and credit recapture, which we commonly call also seat time recovery, it makes that work extremely worthwhile. Participating in either program would allow a student the opportunity to be one step closer to on-time graduation. Now, the State Department of Education allows students in this graduation cohort to continue to work towards completing requirements throughout the summer if they failed courses, if there's time that they need to recapture. So we do have students that are working this summer to recoup credits that they may not have gotten over the course of the school year. In the event a student should fail a course within the approved grade range, they're given the opportunity to use credit recovery to recoup that credit. For the majority of the students, it's completed using an online program that we use, Apex, but we also use Virtual SC when necessary. Courses in Apex are prescriptive, so for each unit, students will take a pretest in order to determine whether or not that material has been mastered, and also to design content that's to be learned and assessed for proficiency in case it's not. In order to participate in credit recovery, students who failed the course had to have failed within a range of 50 to 59. During the school year and during the summertime, right now, students are assigned to a teacher in that content area to provide assistance when needed. Credit recapture, on the other hand, looks at students who need to do seat time recovery, and is offered to students who failed a course due to excessive absenteeism. Schools allow students to make up excessively missed time within assigned instructional materials outside of the regular school day, commonly on Saturday mornings and after school with certified staff. Students have, in this recent school year, they've been allowed to recapture up to 24 hours of seat time per semester. But we do know that there are some gaps in what we've been doing in our academic team routinely, and is right now reviewing some of our program policies and procedures in order to best meet the needs of our students and our teachers. And so as we begin to update our plans for next school year for credit recovery and recapture, we'll make sure we will be providing internal professional development and an abundance of communication to parents and to students.
And that's our presentation. We'll stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
How many, what's the 24 hours relative to? How many hours is a class?
1 hour. One class period equates to one
I
hour.
meant like in a semester, how many hours, is it 40? How many hours does a student go to class in a semester?
Ooh,
Total.
Total, that's a good number, because you're talking about, for a high school student, you may be taking up to 8 classes, 4 classes on an A day, 4 classes on a B day, an hour and a half each day, 4 classes over the course of 108 school days.
I was just trying to figure out like what percentage the 24 hours is. So I'm not doing the math in my head. And so I guess the other question I had is for both of you and Dr. Ross. So this really ties into the grading philosophy too, because I know we've had discussions about the minimum 50. So theoretically, if you have the minimum 50, then every student who fails is eligible for the recovery, the credit recovery, correct?
Yeah, so if you think about credit recovery, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's summer school. So when you fail, you get the opportunity to take the class again for summer school. And as we talk about the grading philosophy for next year, one of the things we need to be aware of is the South Carolina Uniform Grading Policy. Do you know, I don't know if we should make this public, the kids probably already know, but you could drop the class and get a 50. You could stay in the class and get a 12. So the policy and our practice have to be in line. So we want to make sure that our focus is on what that grading philosophy draft that we presented is that do we have that looks at the students' growth and can we find their growth and achievement, and can we look at ways to accelerate or remediate? And if it's not doing that, if the technology is not helping us with that, then that's where I think we need to really focus our time. But we really need to understand that grading philosophy in line with our South Carolina uniform grading policy. And I don't know if I've missed anything there you want to add.
No, I think that's great. I was just going to let you know that the idea behind the credit recovery versus taking the class again, behind that 50 to 59 is the student retained enough that they wouldn't need the entire course again. But if that's the case, below a 50, then of course they would want to retake that entire course. So just a little background information on why that 50 to 59 was there, but we would certainly want to look back at that as we do when we review.
Any more questions? Mr. Scully.
Yeah, just briefly, regarding the credit recapture, the 24 hours, how did we, I'm just curious, how did we come up and arrive at that number? And I assume that that's the part that you're looking at revising, and how are we going to determine it in that case?
We are, and I think I inherited that from my predecessor, so that's why, with a fresh set of eyes, I've been a high school principal as well, and everywhere we all do something different as far as what's allowed. The state, and I mentioned that, the state doesn't say you can only allow students to make up this amount. So that number was probably an arbitrary number. I'm not sure how it was derived, but that is something that we're looking at, because I think what the point that you were making, Ms. Huddle, was about the percentage of time that a student is being allowed to miss. So that is what I, along with Student Services Office, are looking at this summer.
Any more questions? All right. Dr. Ross?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Waters.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Miller, one of the things I think is important to note is that this is our first year of kind of holding the line, as we say, because during COVID, seat time was removed. So you could miss, if you had a passing grade, it didn't matter how many classes you missed, you would still be able to receive credit. So now we're bringing that line back and holding our students to it. But this is, as you go through it, and you know this is, working in the schools, it's a family conversation. It's really engaging those families to ensure that everybody is aware of not only what the attendance requirements are, but then how do we address what's going on so that that child is not only present, but they're ready to learn. And so, Madam Chair, that's our D5 story. We're excited to continue to tell about the excellence of our students and staff in School District 5. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Are there any final questions for Dr. Ross?